very divisive, as you mentioned. You know, there are some in the UFO community that attack researchers that use certain whistleblowers as being reliable, and it just shows you how controversial this is, because with some whistleblowers, for example, we don't have proof, but we feel that we know the truth. And I'll give you a good example. Someone like Philip Corso, Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso, who did work under the Eisenhower administration, and he was involved in several committees, and he did run the foreign technology desk at the Pentagon for the U.S. Army. So all of that is incontrovertible. That's been substantiated by documents. But he comes up and he says, well, he was involved in this secret off-the-shelf program that was commissioned by his superior officer, Lieutenant General Arthur Trudeau, to basically help civilian industries develop certain technologies that were based on what they had retrieved from the Roswell crash. Well, there's no proof for that. None at all. You know, Corso cannot prove that. He doesn't have documents. He never was able to provide any kind of physical infrastructure. All you had was his word. But his word was impeccable because he did in fact have the credentials that he claimed. He did work with the Pentagon. And so, you know, here you have the classic example of where you have truth without proof. And this, I think, is where you have a lot of acrimony, a lot of controversy, because you have some certain researchers, such as Robert Hastings, saying, well, unless there's proof in terms of material evidence, documentation, or corroborating evidence or testimonies from other whistleblowers, then Corso is a liar, or Corso is a fake, is a fraud. And you have this is the debate within the UFO community, because many of these whistleblowers, whether we're talking about Philip Corso, whether we're talking about Robert Dean, whether we're talking about Bob Lazar, and many others, often you have the truth without the proof. You have people who are credible, who have no motivation to deceive anyone, who are telling things that are really giving us a lot of information about UFOs, extraterrestrial life, but there's no proof. And that is a very controversial field, but I think as an exo-political researcher, my responsibility is to really present the truth to people, and where possible provide the proof, but I'm not going to hide the truth just because there's no proof.
Okay, that last sentence is a very important one. Well, I have to tell you honestly that I think it's true, because if you look at reality, you might have an experience which you know is real and know for 300% certainty is real, but you can't prove it in a scientific sense. And in nature and in the multidimensional world, and I've had experience relating to that, it's not an experience you can just put on a test bank, so to speak, and make it reliable like a scientific experiment. It just happened to you once. You just know this was for real, this was for special, this was true, but you can never hand any physical evidence. And on the other hand, it's a bit like a catch-22 situation we're in regarding this ET question, I think, personally, because if you look at the proof for harmful effects of vaccinations, one party might say there's none, while I can deliver you 20 books full of proof that it's harmful and it's not even effective. And it's the same with harmful radiation coming from mobiles and wireless internet. The companies would say there's none that it's harmful and proof. Well, there is, but it's the unseen world. And the thing is, if powerful companies can use the fact that it's the unseen world, and they can just say, we can't prove it, it's not there, so there's no proof for it, so it's not real, while we know there's proof from the unseen world which has an effect in the material world, at least then we have some indirect proof. But in this case, it feels as if we have just no way of knowing. Is he reliable? Is he not? He says yes, he says no. I think that's such a hard problem. But then again, if the article official disclosure of extraterrestrial life is imminent, then I guess we could also just say, and I'm very curious how you comment on that we can wait because we are in fascinating times. If this thing you wrote is for real, then we are going to witness the proof in our lifetimes, aren't we?
Definitely. I think it's inevitable that we will have disclosure occurring in our lifetime. I don't think it's going to be something that is going to take a long time. I think it's inevitable. The timing is really the key here. When is this going to happen? Is it going to happen sometime this year? Is it going to happen later during the Obama administration? But I do think that the years up until 2012 seem to be some critical period in our civilization in terms of a transition to something else. And I think the question has always been, would we transition to a kind of higher order civilization, or would we basically implode, collapse, and therefore follow the path of what has, I think, happened again and again on this planet, where we have civilizations imploding after reaching a certain critical threshold in terms of technological development. And I think we are going to make it as a civilization. I'm very positive, very optimistic. I think we have been able to kind of like reach a sufficient level of coherence. It certainly can be much more, but we've reached a sufficient level where I think we can move forward as a species into a new age of interplanetary awareness, where extraterrestrial contact and technology is open. It's no longer a secret, and these truths, I think, are going to happen. This is going to happen, not only within our lifetime, but I think it's going to happen within the next 2 years, up until 2012, because I think 2012 is some kind of critical transition point, and I believe that we really have the next 2 years to prepare for it.
Well, on a personal level, because I'm thinking of this myself now, and I'm wondering if you ever did, and I'm sure you did, but then the question is, how did you visualize that? I have a hard time, for instance, hugging a pig, so to speak, and I don't mean a political, powerful person here, I mean a real live animal called a pig, or even a horse or whatever. And of course, a relationship to a human is hard enough in itself, and to have a loving relationship with a certain animal, so to speak, can be a hassle as well, or an extra difficulty. But how, in your view, on a personal level, I'm not asking you as an exopolitical researcher or as a scientist, but just you as a person, how do you view living and connecting with this diversity of extraterrestrials where we've just been talking about? How do you view this new world, so to speak?
I think for a lot of individuals it can be very, very intimidating, because we are talking about beings who technologically have developed far ahead of our society, who can do things far beyond what we have become familiar with.
Do we know they can, by the way? Do we know they can do special things, telepathy, mind control, or levitation, invisibility? I'm just naming stuff, but because you're saying with such a certainty, what do we know they can, what we can't, so to speak?
Oh, well, we know many things that they can do that we seemingly can't do. Many experiences have talked about the mind control powers that they have, the levitation, the ability to be able to disappear or come into our kind of into our proximity, to be able to pass through physical structures like walls, teleportation, and of course, these advanced spaceships. So, I mean, we have beings that to the common man are almost, magical, that they are incredibly powerful, and it's like, well, who are we? We are these beings that kind of like only use 10% of our brains or 12% of our brains. A lot of our gifts are hidden deeply within our unconscious, and we have this kind of rational mind that cannot really fathom the complexity of the ET phenomenon. So, in a sense, for the common man, you're very vulnerable, very, very vulnerable. But I fortunately have been, and I guess you and your listeners have been very active in developing a kind of spiritual awareness and meditation practices and so forth. For me, it began back in 1983, and I've been involved in this for 27 years, in developing as a spiritual person, where you are much more than just a physical body with a mind, but you are a spiritual entity that is connected in a very deep way with the whole universe, with the whole cosmos, and that if you develop that connection, with the whole universe.